Welcome to the first of 9 videos exploring the political frame. During this particular video, what we're going to do is look at the lesson objectives that we're going to cover over the next 9 movies or so. And we're also going to look at the key terms. And that's it. So let's go ahead and look at those lesson objectives. So we're going to start off just as we have with all of the other frames by looking at the core assumptions underlying the political perspective and their implication that all organizations involve scarce resources and thus involve conflict and thus are inevitably political. We'll also talk about or have a lesson objective that looks at coalitions, how that affects organizations, get into some definitions between authority and power and the roles of authorities and partisans, and then look at sources of power beyond, vertical authority. And then once we move from there, we'll start looking at conflict, which I alluded to or discussed briefly before, but how you manage that instead of avoid that in a constructive way. The second set of lesson objectives, which digs into the second chapter in the book on the political frame, looks how politics can play within organizations. We'll spend a good bit of time on the 4 key political skills for managers and discuss the importance of each. And then we'll discuss an ethical framework for political decision making. Actually, a good bit of material on that as well. We'll then transition into the last chapter where we talk about organizational processes and why organizations are both political arenas and political agents. We'll contrast bottom-up and top-down political action, and then we'll start talking about organizational ecosystems and the worldwide implications of organizational ecosystems. Spend a little bit of time talking about Walmart and some of the other larger companies. Let's look at some of the key terms now. So power, we've got 2 definitions here. Bowman and Deal define it as the capability to make things happen. Pfeiffer discusses it as the potential to influence behavior. Authorities, which we are pretty well familiar with from the structural perspective. That's going to be your top-down, your formal authority within the organization. Partisans working from the bottom up and how they try to influence organizations. I think those are straightforward. The next 2 definitions are related. So in overbound systems, you're talking about power is highly concentrated, everything's tightly regulated, and typically there are only a few people that are making those types of decisions. The Iraqi army is an example of an overbound system. Underbound system, this is a system where power is diffuse and control is very, very loose. So we'll spend a little bit of time comparing and contrasting overbound and underbound systems and from whose perspective you're looking at when you're making that determination. The next 3 definitions look at conflict, horizontal conflict between child organizations that are at the same level, vertical conflict, interfaces between the levels within an organization, and then cultural conflict. How do we get things done? You can have different cultures within different divisions within an organization and how that affects the organization. We'll then move into some cool stuff on creating value and claiming value. Those are pretty interesting styles of negotiation. So one's focused on problem solving, the other is hard bargaining and aiming at winning. The trader mentality. I'm not willing to give up anything for free. It would talk about positional bargaining and principled bargaining. And then from there, we'll move into the last bit where we're talking about those political ecosystems, political agents in the political arena. Actually, some pretty big stuff in terms of implications and changes in history over really the last 150 years in terms of the power associated with corporations as they become a political ecosystem and are able to muster that type of power. All right, very good. This brings us to the conclusion of the first of 9 videos looking at the political frame. During this video, we've looked at lesson objectives and we've talked about the key terms associated with the political frame. What we're going to do during the next lesson is go in and go back and look at the core assumptions of the political frame. We're going to revisit the Challenger incident. Boy, we tend to visit that every single frame, and it keeps on giving. And then we'll talk a little bit about organizations as coalitions and power and decision making. All right, that's all for now. Look forward to seeing you in the next video.